Indeed you are, just coming up to 16 to 9 here this morning. Filling in, of course, just for today. We thought we'd give it a go after me having the condition Bell's palsy that I'm still recovering from. Nat Wilson, you'll have Nat tomorrow all the way through to Friday for the remainder of the week, and a very good morning. And I haven't seen you for ages. Dubbo Region Man Matthew Dickerson, how are you?
It's very good, thank you, and it's good to see you back in the chair.
Thank
I haven't
you.
seen you for ages either.
I am trying to keep the tongue and the bottom lip and the rest of the, that's a bit rude to say, the saliva in the mouth. It's hard with this condition, but it's in both sides of the face. And you probably remember me doing an interview across the Dubbo Show weekend, not to suggest I got it because of the Dubbo Show, but I'd been out in the cold, and next thing, this thing pops up and creeps up over the next week. And it was a very difficult sort of a thing to deal with when you communicate on the radio all the time. Do I look funny?
No, you look fine. And the interesting part is, I'm not a medical expert, of course, but from what little I know of Bell's palsy, it does seem to be random. People attribute it to a whole range of different things, but I don't think anyone actually knows exactly what causes it. But no, I was actually listening to you on the radio as I was driving down here this morning, and I just thought, there's Brett Murray on the radio again. It didn't sound...
That's very kind.
Well, no, it sounded fine.
If you'd heard the weather at 6:05, well, I was told I shouldn't be on the radio by our colleague next door, Ian Furlow, because I was only going to come in and, let the music play and that sort of thing, but why not give it a go whilst we is?
That's right.
So what have I missed out on?
Maybe you're a bit rusty at 6:05 the first time.
I reckon.
On air.
Well, I didn't think I'd get up out of bed. That's the other issue too, after having so much time off. Thanks for coming in. I know that we moved you from 8 o'clock into this half hour. It's nice to have you here. A few things. Now the referendum is out of the way. I know that you've probably been asked before, why was it so important that council keeps separate from the referendum?
I think it's one of those things with the democracy we've got. It's really important from our councils, and different councils took different views. There's 537 councils across the nation. Some of them took different positions. But when we discussed it with our councils, we had this firm view that we've got a democracy. And the wonderful thing about our democracy is I can't tell you how to vote. Council can't tell or shouldn't tell anyone how to vote on anything. We don't do it for a federal election or a state election or even a local government election. So we took the position that we shouldn't be telling people how to vote in a referendum. What we did think was important, that we should be saying, make sure you get educated. And the forum we had last week, I think was really good. We had about 50 people in the room during the forum, and then already, and I haven't checked it again this week, but last week when I checked it a couple of days after the forum, we had another 300 people watch the YouTube clip that we created from the video of that, because it was live streamed as well. So I think that was really good, and I actually really enjoyed just some of the comments that were made during the evening. So we had 2 yes speakers, 2 no speakers, a maybe speaker, and an MC or a moderator that just made sure everything kept on track and went through things. And out of everything, and I feel it's almost unfair to pick out anything that anyone said on the night, but there was one thing that really struck a chord with me, and it was said by Pam Wells, and she's a yes campaigner. But one thing that I really liked that she said was that it was something about this ownership of the land. And some people talk about Aboriginals own the land, or people talk about always was, always will be owned by Aboriginals. And Pam said, I don't think Aboriginals own the land. I think Aboriginals, as all people in this nation, are custodians of the land while we're here, and then someone else will be custodians. And that struck a chord with me, because I have said the same thing about council many times. People talk to me about council, and I often say, look, I don't own council. I am but a custodian, a very privileged custodian in a representative position at the moment, and someone else will be that custodian tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. There'll be another person who will come along, another group of people who will be custodians. And I really like what Pam said, because it really puts the emphasis on all of us to look after the land. The land owns us. We don't own the land. We'll all return to the dirt at some stage, but the dirt will still be there. The earth will still be there. So Absolutely. I thought that was good.
No, I think that's an important part. It's like us here at the radio station, not to sort of put the two up together, but we're custodians of the radio station until someone else or other people come along to look after it for the next 10 or 20 years. The vote continues, the counting of the votes continue, about 78% of those. With anything, as you know, there's always informal votes. It was interesting to see that 1.12% for the Parks electorate divisional votes, or about 940 informal votes, which compared to the formal 98.88% or 82,972 votes, did you think that that's quite high, or is that normal? I was surprised that it was actually quite low, I thought.
That is very low compared to the number of informal votes you'll see at a federal or a state election, for example. So I'd love to see 0% informal votes, but I think that's unrealistic. Getting down around the 1% mark seems quite reasonable in terms of informal. Again, it wasn't that complicated. It was write a yes or a no, so it didn't seem overly complicated. Maybe a normal vote that you're doing where you've got to number things and write lots of numbers in, maybe that gets a bit more complicated. But 1%, I think that seems reasonable, and the history says that normal referendums, or normally the informal vote at a referendum is fairly low. So that would be consistent with what we've seen in previous referendums, if we can remember way back to last century when the last referendum was
Yeah,
voted.
for sure. And just reporting, the AEC says New South Wales majority this morning, majority percentage, no's 59.52%. When you compare it with the yes vote, 40.48%. But the Parks Division, interestingly, the no vote 78.91% versus 21.09% of the vote when you break that down for the Parks Division. And of course, there's multiple divisions, so you just can't go off that. I was just kind of surprised at that with the Western region, and what people are feeling with that this morning.
Well, there's been a huge amount of analysis, and I don't call myself a political analyst in any stretch of the imagination, but I've read some of that different analysis, and there's been so many different comparisons made. So there was one comparison that compared the yes and no versus the educational level in each of those electorates, and I thought that was probably a long bow to try and work out what education people have had, whether they voted yes or no. So this analysis said the higher educated electorate was, the more likely they were to vote yes, and I thought, well, I'm not sure that that's as simple as that. There was another analysis that I saw that said the distance away from a capital city in your state, the further away you were, the more likely you were to vote no. One analysis that I would be really interested to see, because one of the ones that surprised me, Northern Territory and WA were obviously, their results were coming in later than the eastern states because their voting closed later. And I was interested to see the Northern Territory. Northern Territory has 30.8% of its population Aboriginal. I kind of made an assumption that because it had a high Aboriginal population, there'd be a fairly high yes vote there. And I was a bit surprised when the results started to come in that the results were actually a higher no vote, say than Victoria, a higher no vote than Tasmania, which was a bit surprising. But then when I sat back and thought about it, and I looked at that result from the Parks electorate, and I thought it'd be interesting to see an analysis between the percentage population, Aboriginal population, and the percentage of no, because maybe in places like the Parks electorate, we live with Aboriginal people, everyone gets on well together, the example that Mark Horton gave last week at the forum was, we've got 2 Aboriginal councillors on our council of 10. There's not 20% Aboriginal people in Dubbo, there's 15.6%, but we've got 2 representatives. Other non-Aboriginal people are voting for those Aboriginal people. They have to, or they wouldn't have been elected. So we've got people that we just deal with. And I think in the Parks electorate, well, I probably can't talk about the whole Parks electorate, but certainly what I see in Dubbo is that we've got Aboriginal people, we've got non-Aboriginal people, we've got people that come from overseas. 18.5% of our people living in our LGA were born overseas. We're just people. That's the thing to me. So maybe when you've got electorates where you've got Aboriginal people you're living with side by side, maybe people say, well, we didn't need the voice because we're already getting on together and we've got people represented in councils and we've got people that are part of our society. Why is there a separate voice needed? Now I'm speculating. That's without any expert analysis.
And I didn't bring
it.
you in to talk about just the voice either, but I just thought it was interesting, and I would have liked to have seen, and I know it's a referendum where it's yes and no, make it easy for people, but I reckon some of the comments, if we had a comment field, that would have been interesting, but you would take forever to get through those, wouldn't you?
You would.
Something more important that we've got to talk about, sign up for Water Night 2023. It'll take place this Thursday during National Water Week. Tell me a little bit about that.
This is really one of those things, a bit like Earth Hour when you meant to turn off all your electricity as much as you can for an hour. This is about seeing if there's ways we can just save water for just a short period of time. Now, people, the whole idea of this is organised by council as such, but the whole idea is not to say, okay, everyone stop using water, stop drinking, stop flushing the toilet. It's really just Can you use less water in the household for that period of time? It might mean that you filled up a water bottle beforehand and then you'll use that to drink from, but it's things we just need to think about. And if you think about, well, maybe I didn't need to use water for that, or maybe I didn't need to flush the toilet, I did number ones and I'll come back later and flush it after I do another number ones. Was that the end of the world? Did the whole, I mean, again, up to your individual household, maybe doing number twos and not flushing might be such a good idea, but number ones, you know, maybe we could save some water that way. So it just makes people think about how you might use water a little bit differently. So it's a little concept that just starts to get people to think.
All right, Dubbo Art Fair has been nominated for a, I can't say this word, prestigious award. Did I get it out? This is great news, of course.
Well, and you don't do things in the community and council as such to win awards. I'm sure the Zoo FM has won awards over the years, and you don't go and do things to say, let's do this so we'll win an award.
You work hard just because you like to.
That's right, but it gives you a reflection on the sort of talent, the sort of things that we do in council that no one really recognises. We've got lots of award-winning parts of council in terms of our jail has won awards, Old Dubbo Jail, for example. We've got lots of different facets of our community that are the best in the region, the best in the state, the best in the nation, maybe. So we've got all these great things in Dubbo, just recognise them sometimes. So that particular one there, the art fair is a great event. If it wins an award, then fantastic, but it's still a great event. All
right, Dubbo Library, retailing going on there. We're running out of time, and I want to talk to you about the res here in Dubbo as well.
Sure, so the Dubbo Library, we're doing some retailing, so it's closed for 4 days. I haven't got the dates off the top of my head, but have you got the dates there in front of you, just to tell people the exact dates that we've got the library closed there?
From 28th of October to 31.
Thank you.
Inclusive.
Thank you. So there's some retailing being done there just to make it a bit safer and to refurb some of those areas there. But that means that you can't get into the library, so we've actually got that closed for those dates, the 28th to the 31st of October. So just be aware of that, be conscious of that, I suppose. And sometimes just be conscious of that might be where people might use the toilet. So, for example, be conscious of that. You mightn't have access to a toilet there if you're down in the CBD. Yeah,
for sure. The renewable energy, what's it called, energy zone. Talk to us about that, because you met with the chief executive of Squadron Energy, I think it was called.
Correct. Jason Willoughby was in town. He's the CEO of Squadron Energy. Squadron Energy is a huge organisation, and we have our RES here, our Renewable Energy Zone. It's called the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone, if you think that's a long enough title. And so with that RES, we've got 37 different projects that are either already in place now or going ahead. Now, technically, if I want to get really pedantic here, some of them aren't part of the RES. So the Badenga Wind Farm that you see down around Badenga, around Wellington now, if you go down towards Wellington or across to Mudgee, then that technically is not part of the RES, because technically, if you're part of the RES, you're connecting to the new energy transmission lines. That one's connecting to the existing ones, but still, in that area, there are lots of renewable projects. So 37 projects in total, approximately will be there by the time this is all finished. They'll produce about 11.5 gigawatts. The RES itself will be 6 gigawatts, about 5.5 gigawatts from other projects. Squadron Energy's got 2 projects going ahead. They account for over a gigawatt of that 11.5 gigawatts. So they're a pretty big player in this whole scheme of things. Now, one of the things that's really important from my perspective and from council's perspective is this will be great. 6,000 employees needed for this. What can we have as a lasting, ongoing legacy? So whenever I get a chance to talk to one of the proponents, like the CEO of Squadron Energy, what can we do? What can we have as a lasting legacy? What can we leave in 20 years' time to look back and say, wow, this whole area has been transformed? There's a whole range of things we can do. One of the concepts I've talked about is a thing called a REACT, Renewables Education and Activity Centre. And we might even add training on that. It might be called the REACT Centre. We might add training into there as well. But something that's a visitor centre, like the visitor centre over at the Parkes Telescope, like the visitor centre at the Coombe Discovery Centre. Both of those get over 100,000 people a year going through there. Imagine a visitor centre like that with some education, with some training there maybe, and 100,000 visitors going through near Wellington. So that's one idea, but there's other ideas as well. We want to make sure there's a lasting legacy left. And I must say, I was impressed with the CEO of Squadron Energy, because he's very much focused on the same thing, leaving a lasting legacy for our community.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess we're out of time, but standing committees, they were held on Tuesday night, and the service review of the community committees. What does that mean for us?
So two things, and sorry, that's my mistake there. It's Thursday night. Those were held.
Thursday,
I wrote
yeah.
Tuesday night on there, sorry, but it was actually Thursday
Okay.
night. But Thursday night we had 3 elections. So you've got the mayoral term. So while you were gone, I had to stand for election again from my fellow councillors to be re-elected. So I was.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then the standing committees also have a mayoral term, the same term as the mayor's term. So we had to elect chairs there. So we've got Matt Wright is now the chair of the infrastructure committee. He replaces Josh Black. Jess Goff stayed on as chair of the culture committee, and you've got Shibli Chowdhury has now replaced Damien Mann as the chair of the corporate services committee. Damien stood down and said it'd be good to share that role around and give some other people experience, so that's Shibli Chowdhury in there as well. One of the things that we talked about in a workshop, but that won't come through to council till a couple of weeks' time, but at that workshop we talked about the 16 community committees. And this is an interesting one because we got rid of all the committees, or we didn't, the last council got rid of all the community consultative committees. We had lots of them in place in the old Dubbo City Council, all gone. When the new council came in at the beginning of last year, at the end of 2021, the council said, we need those committees up and running again. What are they? What do they look like? We did a big planning session, Butcher's paper, lots of committees we talked about. We ended up with 16 community committees. They've been running now for a year and a half. The staff put forward a concept to just review those, have a look at those. Do we want to get rid of those? Me personally, no, I don't. But are they all doing a great job? Are there different ways that we could engage with those community members outside that community structure, that community committee structure? That's something that will be discussed by councillors more, but also we want the community feedback around that, how important are those committees. Me personally, I think they're incredibly important, and I love the fact that lots of people in the community have got that say directly into a committee that doesn't make decisions, it just makes recommendations through to council, but it gives people the opportunity to have their say, and I'm hesitant to say the word, but gives them a voice in the community. I mean, that word has been thrown around a lot lately, but gives lots of those people an extra voice into council. So
it's a good
keep an eye on that.
conduit, isn't it, for the community?
I think it's an excellent conduit. I also understand where the staff are coming from, doing a review to make sure we're running things in the most efficient way.
Nice to catch up with you. Thanks for coming in, and I'll pop up at time to time, see if I can learn to talk better.
Excellent. Thanks, Brett. Good to see you.
Thanks very much. Just on 9 o'clock news time.